Goeienaand, baie welkom by vanaand se uitsending van Fokus. Ek is Lenet Francis. Later in die program besoek ons 'n munisipaliteit in die Noord-Kaap waar politiekery en kriminele klagte tans meer aandag trek as dienslewering. En besoekers aan Kaapstad se strande kan met 'n vryer gemoed die branders aandurf. Maar vanaand se gesprek. Verlede week het die optrede van lede van die Suid-Afrikaanse Polisiediens en die dood van 4 betogende inwoners in die Moetleklong woonbuurt meer opslag gemaak as dit waaroor inwoners van die woonbuurt by Brits betoog het. En dit is water, of dan eerder min water. Die voormalige ouditeur-generaal Terrence Nombembe het bevind dat die Madibeng munisipaliteit in die 2011-2012 boekjaar 'n allemintige liewer 70 miljoen rand van sy munisipale infrastruktuursbegroting glad nie uitgegee het nie. Die Madibeng munisipaliteit is nie die enigste munisipaliteit waar belastingbetalers gereeld met geen, min of vrot water sit. Nou om hieroor te gesels het ek by my in die ateljee die hoofuitvoerende beampte van die Waternavorsingskommissie, Disija Naidu. Mr. Naidu, welcome to Focus. Thank you for your time, sir. This morning, I saw an update on Facebook from Professor Jonathan Jansen, and I quote, "No water in my town, no communication from my municipality, no time given as to when water will be back, huge water bills paid every month, no water in my house." We've seen, not only those updates, but we've seen people dying because they want to claim their right to have access to reliable, safe, clean water. Why is this not happening?
It should be happening, and there are various people working hard to make sure that it does happen. We have to understand where we are and where we come from. I mean, one of the problems that municipalities have is dealing with backlog, at the same time organizing to have substantive water available for economic growth, because we don't want growth to be a constraint factor, and at the same time we have the refurbishment issue. Now, what the WRC has done, together with its partners, it's done some extensive studies in these domains. And the things that come to the top of the tree all of the time, the biggest risk is asset management, operations and maintenance, and this is way behind. We definitely have a capacity shortage in the country of the appropriate capacities, and part of this is the reason why a lot of the money is not spent, because you've got to know exactly what you're buying. You've got to know that you're getting the right kinds of technologies, that you have the right kinds of mechanisms to do the operations, maintenance, so that it continues to work well. And these are the stumbling factors that have been at play for a long, long time. And we need to link this to some of the other issues that we also know in the system. One of the things that we know, also coming out of very good research we've done in this country, actually global level research, first-class research, talking to us about non-revenue water. Our non-revenue water in this country is 37% in the municipalities alone. Now, let me tell you what this actually means.
Yes.
It means that in any given year, 1.5 billion cubic meters of water is not accounted for. This is all of the water that Rand Water supplies in a year, but this is over the country. This equates to 7.2 billion rands a year. So,
If you say unaccounted for, what do you mean by that? Is it water that's wasted, or we just don't know where the water is, or there's just no... What's unaccounted water?
Well, the unaccounted for water means this. The 37% is currently unaccounted for. It means you can't account for what leaves the system from the supply to the revenue that you get at the end. Now, 25% of that is actual leakage, water that goes through bad reticulation, etc. But the rest of it is about poor financial management in municipalities, whether it's not metering, or it's not billing, or it's not following up. And then in addition to that, we have the issue of either an inability to pay or an unwillingness to pay, because we have an unwillingness problem in the South African environment. The net result is that municipalities aren't able to collect 7.2 billion rands a year, which could quite easily deal with the financial inflows required for all of the things that we're talking about.
So where people have been able to pay but they haven't had access, who's been sucking us dry in this process? Is it government? Is it the provincial government? Is it the municipalities? Is it all of the above?
Well, I'm not sure if anyone's sucking anyone dry. The reality is that in a municipal system, because we generally have this payment problem across all services, the services that do get paid for provide the money to subsidize the services that don't get paid for. So in a municipality, if you're actually getting the water accounts paid and you're not getting the electricity accounts paid for whatever reason, some kind of cross-subsidization occurs because municipalities have to deliver the service. So I don't think anyone's actually stealing the money. It's about actually collecting the money into the system, but giving people the security of supply that they require. So if I get water supplied to my household 365 days a year with no problem, I would have no difficulty paying you if I could. If, however, I'm getting it for 200 days of the year, then I'm going to have issue with that.
What have been the turnaround strategies? The Department of Water Affairs have also numerous times referred to the fact that they've had a backlog. But surely, from 2010, 2009 up till now, we should have had something in place where we could have delivered.
There are many things that are currently happening, and none of them are happening as quickly as they should. And there are various problems with various things. Let's count some of the successes, because we can only build on the successes. We can't build on the failures. We can learn from the failures. The successes we've had to date, from 1994 to 2012, we've moved from a 58% access to safe water in this country to 95.2%. This is a phenomenal thing. There is nowhere else in the world that has achieved that. We've also organized for a much better way in which municipalities organize their water with the blue drop and the green drop mechanisms as a regulatory tool. So these are things that are telling us that we can be a lot better at what we're doing. The problem we have, I think, is that we're dealing with lack of services to the very marginalized people who don't sit on infrastructure that can easily be extended. They're not in dense enough settlements. The last mile cost actually becomes an inhibiting cost. And this is where we're seeing a lot of the problem.
I know in 2012, Minister Edmund Molewa had said that we were hoping to attract foreign investors to help with this backlog. How reasonable is that? How feasible is that? And with the crisis that we have, people dying because they don't have access. Are we going to be popular enough to attract that? And then what do we do with it?
Well, that's a very good question, Lynette. I mean, here's our reality. We need both new infrastructure as well as the need to refurbish current infrastructure. And that total budget is around 700 billion rands. This is what has been declared as part of the infrastructure program. On the new dams and the new pipelines and the new reticulation schemes, there will be investors, because there's a good turnover, there's a good promise of return. So we will get the new dams, we will get the new pipelines. What is much more difficult to get is money for operations and maintenance and refurbishment. And there I think we just have to make much more crisply the cost-benefit argument. So, for example, I told you about the non-revenue water. We know we have a loss of 7.2 billion rands a year. We know that we can have, the minister has announced something called the War on Leaks. That program costs approximately 2 billion rands a year. So for a 2 billion rand investment, we can get a 7.2 billion rand return. Now that sounds like a good sum, and surely this is going to make sense to some people.
Just briefly, just attracting those investors, but besides that, leaving it all, getting into partnerships with private companies, isn't that a more sensible answer?
Well, the money that we're talking about is primarily going to come from the private sector. And for the private sector, and this is a discussion that's happening all over the world, you have to have a reasonable return on your investment, on the one hand, and this I think everyone will accept. But we also need to work out in countries like South Africa, and this is by no means unique to us, to ensure that you don't organize yourself to have a further differentiation. Because what can easily happen is the private investor comes in and only sells to the people who are wealthy enough to pay for it up front because there's a profit motive. Then we continue to have the problem of that extra 5% of people who currently don't have access. So we need to have the right kinds of agreements in place that says, yes, you can get the profit that you require, but part of the contract has to be this extension of service.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, Mr. Naidoo. I'm afraid we can't continue the conversation. I hope that we can do so in the future. Net hierna, warm bekgevegte in die Namakwa munisipaliteit laat belastingbetalers oor dienslewering wonder. Bly ingeskakel. Welkom terug. Die reeds sukkelende Namakwa munisipaliteit op Springbok is van dese week verder in onsekerheid gedompel. Dit nadat die DA in die Noord-Kaap en die burgemeester van die munisipaliteit kriminele klagtes teen die munisipale bestuurder gelê het. Die klagtes spruit uit onder meer die beweerde wanbestuur van munisipale fondse. Werknemers se bydraes tot hulle pensioenfondse is glo ook nie aan die fondse oorbetaal nie. Verder word die munisipale bestuurder verantwoordelik gehou vir onbetaalde water- en elektrisiteitsrekeninge by Eskom en Sedibeng Water. Eskom word R20 miljoen geskuld. Die munisipale bestuurder word ook daarvan aangekla dat hy na bewering vir homself en die finansiële bestuurder verhogings van 7,5% toegestaan het. Dis 50% meer as die 5% waarop ooreengekom is. Regisseur Keith Suister en kameraman Gerard Botes was in Springbok.
Om die beweringe te staaf het Fokus met beide die munisipale bestuurder en die burgemeester hier by die Namakwa munisipaliteit kom praat om hulle kante van die saak te hoor.
Ek het oor 8 maande korrespondensie gevoer met die munisipale bestuurder waarin hy 1 of 2 van die klagtes wat ek uitgewys het, sommige wat honderde duisende rand beloop, wat hy nie opgeantwoord het. Die grootste kommer wat ons het, is dat vir etlike maande, amper vir 'n jaar en langer, is ons inkomste in 'n maand minder as wat die uitgawes is. Met ander woorde, ons het 'n negatiewe kontantvloei wat net erger en erger word. Die debiteure, die mense wat vir ons skuld, is 48 miljoen. Die krediteure wat ons skuld is 85 miljoen. Waarvan Sedibeng en Eskom 80 miljoen opmaak.
Waarom het julle nie al vroeër die munisipale bestuurder aangekla of probeer om van hom uit sy stoel te kry nie, want hierdie munisipaliteit is nou al vir 'n baie lang tyd in die spervuur.
Ek kon van die eerste dag af stappe neem, maar ek het gedog ek kan die munisipale bestuurder so ver kry om te besef wat is die omstandighede en dit te verbeter. Hier lê rapporte nou van November wat ek gekry het saam met Desember se rapporte, 2 dae gelede was die spertyd. So dalk het ek my misgis om te dink dat ek iemand soos meneer Baartman kan rehabiliteer.
Meneer Baartman, as die munisipale bestuurder van die Namakwa munisipaliteit word jy nou deur die DA en die burgemeester van die munisipaliteit krimineel aangekla omdat hulle sê jy is onbevoegd, jy maak jouself skuldig aan wanbestuur. Wat is jou reaksie daarop?
Soos ek nou hier met jou praat, het ek nog geen klagstaat van die polisie ontvang en of ewens 'n besoek van die polisie ontvang nie.
Daar word ook gesê dat jy jouself verhogings gegee het, dat jy nie pensioenfondse inbetaal nie. Is dit so?
Ek wil vir u wys. Dis Oktober, November en Desember maand se betalings wat ek hier met u sit van die pensioenfonds wat oorbetaal is aan die verskillende pensioenfondse. Ek weet nie waar die burgemeester aan die inligting kom nie.
Daar word ook gesê dat jy hierdie munisipaliteit met 'n ystervys regeer. Hoekom doen jy dit?
Daar's sedert Maart maand 2013 nog geen vergaderings gehou nie. En Namakwa op die huidige oomblik lewer nog steeds sy dienste aan sy gemeenskap. En ek vra enige amptenare reg oor Suid-Afrika dat wat vir 'n jaar nie kan 'n raadsvergadering het en raad nie funksioneer nie, dat hy munisipaliteit nog nie in die geval, die munisipaliteit nie in die geval nie.
Jy weet dat jy net deur 'n raadsvergadering uit jou stoel uit gelig kan word, maar jy word nooit raadsvergaderinge gehou nie.
Dit is heeltemal korrek. Jy sien, ek het vir die DA en verkoop koalisie al sedert September maand, het sê verlede jaar, sê ek vir hulle, as ek die probleem is in die munisipaliteit, ek is bereid om te loop en ek het dit publiek op die radio ook gaan sê. Maar ek loop nie leehande nie. En die DA het niks daar omtrent van sedert daai tyd gedoen.
Die ANC op Springbok sê die besluit van die DA om die munisipale bestuurder krimineel aan te kla is onvanpas en gaan die reeds sukkelende munisipaliteit verder knou.
Hulle moes eerstens 'n raadsvergadering geroep het en die klagtes wat hulle teen hom het in die hele raad bekend gemaak het. Slegs dan kan die raad 'n besluit neem word hy krimineel vervolg en of hy vir 'n tydperk of verlof deur die raad geplaas kan word. In my insiens is dit 'n politieke foefie van 'n VD se kant af.
Die gemeenskap hier is nou bekommerd dat die debakel rondom die munisipale bestuurder ook op hulle 'n impak gaan hê.
Ons het elke jaar so die tweede jaar wat ons op Kersfeesdag nie water het nie en soos ons is my suster is aan mekaar permanent sit sy sonder water elke week.
Ek voel heeltemal nie lekker oor die feit nie. Die punt is Namakwa is besig om ons land en ons wêreld in 'n gesig te sit.
Ek glo die gemeenskap kan benefit as hy sy kantoor kan verlaat.
'n Mens kan net hoop dat die debakel wat sy kop op die voorhand van die verkiesing uitsteek, vinnig opgelos word. Nie alleen van die munisipaliteit om 'n klewerige web nie, maar die belastingbetalers is die eintlike slagoffers van die politieke intriges van die Namakwa munisipaliteit.
Net hierna, swemmers kan maar minder oor hulle skouers loer wanneer hulle die Kaapse waters aandurf, bly ingeskakel. Welkom terug. Duisende besoekers stroom elke somervakansie na dosyne Kaapse strande vir 'n lafenissie in die branders. Verskeie van die strande rondom Kaapstad spog met die gesogte blou vlag status. Meeste is veilig teen haai-aanvalle. In Valsbaai, waar bekende swem- en branderplankstrande soos Muizenberg en Vishoek jaarliks duisende vakansiegangers lok, is moontlike aanvalle deur gevreesde witboothaie egter altyd 'n gevaar waarteen gewaak moet word. Spesialist-regisseur Dani Jeffers het gaan kyk hoe strande soos Muizenberg en veral Vishoek deur toegewyde haai-waarnemers beveilig word en hoe suksesvol die Kaap se enigste haainet is. Hier is sy storie.
In September 2011 het 'n bloedige aanval deur 'n wit doodshaai die gemeenskap van Vishoek in Valsbaai geruk. 'n Swemmer is gruisam vermink en het van sy ledemate verloor. 2 ooggetuies beskryf die voorval.
On that day, Hugh and I were coming back from the Pollsmoor prison where we work as spiritual workers, and we spotted the shark and closing in on Michael Cohen.
So we stopped the car, went onto the beach to try and warn him. And as we got to the peak of the sand dune and saw the sea, we saw that shark actually attacking. We saw the shark come out of the water in attack, and it really was quite an horrific sight.
It was horrific because the intention was to warn him, and then the attack took place and the sea turned bright red. And that was a real sense of horror and helplessness at first.
Slegs 3 haai-aanvalle is verlede jaar in Suid-Afrika aangemeld, almal in die Oos- en Wes-Kaap. 1998 is steeds die jaar met die meeste aanvalle, toe al 15 voorvalle in Wes- en Oos-Kaapse waters voorgekom het. 2 mense het sedert 2004 in haai-aanvalle in die see by Vishoek gesterf. Michael Cohen was een van die gelukkiges om te oorleef.
His right leg was severed at the knee, and he lost the whole bottom part of that leg. His left leg was broken through just above the ankle, and the bone was broken. It was attached just by a few pieces of flesh.
Die stad Kaapstad het sedertdien verskeie projekte van stapel gestuur om swemmers en branderplankryers teen moontlike haai-aanvalle te beskerm. Haai-waarnemers word gebruik om die see in Valsbaai dop te hou vir moontlike haai-aktiwiteite. Sirenes en kleurvlae word dan gebruik om mense wat die strande by Muizenberg en Vishoek gebruik te waarsku sodra 'n haai opgemerk word. 'n Spesiale soort haainet vir 'n gedeelte van die Vishoek swemstrand is reeds geruime tyd in gebruik. Die net word vroegsoggens ontplooi en saans weer verwyder.
Okay, copy that. So you're going to go and get rid of it?
Sarah Titley is die projekbestuurder van Shark Spotters, 'n groep toegewyde inwoners in die gebied wat poog om haie weg te hou en lewens te red.
Well, it's a shark exclusion net, so it's a net that forms a complete barrier to sharks entering in an area. And it's being trialled here in Vishoek because there's been a number of shark bite incidents here over the last 10 years and a lot of shark activity which has kept the beach closed at some point. So it's an additional safety measure here to allow people to enjoy the beach again. This net is deployed on a daily basis. It's the only net of its type in the world like this, and it is towed out by a boat every day and attached to fixed points on land and a pivot buoy in the sea. And then it forms a complete barrier from the seafloor to the sea surface. And it takes a crew of 11 people, 3 on a boat and 8 on the land, and they feed it off a trailer into the sea. It's towed out and then it's dropped down to go straight down to the seafloor.
Die vishoek haainet is in samewerking met die KwaZulu-Natal Haairaad ontwikkel. Dit is omgewingsvriendelik en poog om haie weg te hou eerder as om hulle dood te maak.
These nets are very different to the shark nets that we have in Durban and also in Australia as well, which are large mesh gill nets, which are designed to catch sharks and so reduce shark populations. These nets just form a complete barrier, and so therefore no sharks can enter an area. So they're not killing any sharks, and we're also trying to not kill any other types of wildlife. So we're trying to reduce entanglement risk. So by taking the nets out overnight, we reduce the risk of any whales or even fish not seeing the net and then getting wrapped up in it. The pilot started in March this year. We got the permit through and we started our first deployment in March, and we've been practicing over winter because it's the first time it's been done anywhere in the world. So it's definitely a lot of trial and error. It's been very successful so far. The wind and swell are limiting factors. So on days with a strong southeaster or a big swell, then we do struggle to put the net in and out.
Today?
Like today, the wind has been a bit too strong, so we have struggled to do it. But overall, it's been very good. And, you know, the reception that we've got from the general public, they really support the net and are using it and appreciate it as an extra safety measure to allow them to have confidence in using the beach again.
Hoewel sommige vishoekinwoners blykbaar gekant is teen die haainet en dit as 'n vermorsing van geld sien, bestaan daar min twyfel dat dit help om lewens te spaar en om swemmers weer in groot getalle na die vishoekstrand te lok.
The shark net is the absolute ideal. It provides a safe area, it's not too intrusive, and it's only taking up a small portion of Fish Hoek Beach.
I think it provides a safe area for people here at Fish Hoek, a lot of peace of mind when you're swimming. You know, I've lived in Fish Hoek a long time, and I feel sorry that we have to have shark nets on what was always considered a very safe beach. But yes, it does provide that peace of mind for those that come down who are not used to swimming in the sea.
Part of the things that we're assessing in this net is, you know, how do sharks interact with the net? Will they interact with the net at all? So that's why we still say if we see a shark, we've still got shark spotters on duty, and during this trial period, if we see a shark while the net is in the water, we will still call the people out of the water because we don't yet know how the sharks are going to react to the net, and that's one of the things that we need to assess. Do they just, you know, deflect away and move away, or are they interested in the net? So it's all part of the criteria of what we're assessing over this 12-month period.
Dis ongelukkig alwaar vir ons vanaand tyd het. Kykers se kommentaar is altyd welkom en stuur gerus vir ons span voorstelle. Ons maak dalk net 'n draai in jou deel van ons land. Geskryf net die woord Fokus, gevolg deur 'n kort boodskap en SMS dit dan na 34444. 'n SMS kos R2 en word gerus ook 'n lid van ons Fokus groep op Facebook en volg ons dan ook op Twitter by Fokus ZA. Van my, Lenet Francis, ons gas vanaand en die res van die Fokusspan. Totsiens dan tot volgende Sondag aand.